Wasn't Randy Orton challenging for the world title and on fire in 2020, and in less than 1 week he's lost 2 matches clean? I understand Keith Lee is new, but Randy Orton lost clean last night. Wonder who wrote that one. The main event was terrible. I had no problem with Roman Reigns winning the title. I had a problem with the fact that he wasn't there for 70% of the match. It was cool the way it ended, but in all honesty, couldn't tell you too much excitement. My problem was not the decisions made on this show, although some of them were not very smart. My problem was the fact that this show happened to begin with, because I can't think of any show, WWE pay-per-view wise, that had no value. This show did not need to happen whatsoever, at all. But regardless, we're going to review WWE Payback in full like we always do. You hit that like button, you subscribe, and you go nowhere else. Going into this show, I don't feel like there were very high expectations, and one of the reasons why is because for some reason WWE, when they panned out their pay-per-view schedule, I don't know how late or how soon they made this decision, they decided to add WWE Payback, not only on the pay-per-view card, but 1 week after SummerSlam. So we knew that this was probably going to be littered with rematches and just matches that you don't care about. And that's pretty much what it was, but it wasn't all rematches. This show wasn't all awful. There were some things on this show that were very good, some that built towards more. But for the most part, I can't sit here and look at this show and tell you that it was a good show, because a lot of it just didn't make sense. And it's a show that didn't need to happen. This show would be better off not happening. But it happened, and here we are. We had Randy Orton and Keith Lee go the way that it did. We had the main event, which, I mean, I understand Roman Reigns winning the title. No involvement from Alexa Bliss. No retribution all night. No idea where the hell they were. And just, again, a show that there are some bright spots throughout, but this was one of the more underwhelming shows from you know what I mean? One of the more underwhelming shows from the year. Again, some of the wrestling was great, but I just couldn't get into it. I felt that even before the show happened and the show took off, I couldn't sit here and tell you, wow, I'm so excited for Payback, because I wasn't. Because there's nothing on this show that is going to make me say I have to go back and watch it. You know what was really crazy? The best match on this show may have been a Nia Jax match. Now, I'm not going to shit all over Nia Jax, but I'm just going to tell you exactly how it is. The Riot Squad defeat the Iconics in the pre-show. Didn't watch it. You know, I don't really typically watch the pre-shows, so there's really nothing to get in depth for there. The show kicked off with Apollo Crews versus Bobby Lashley for the United States Championship. And if there's one thing I can tell you about this, is that Apollo's been dominating multiple losses, given multiple losses to MVP. There was no way that the Hurt Business was going to keep losing. They put Bobby Lashley in the U.S. title feud. Again, I went over on my preview and predictions. You can go back and watch that. I know some of you actually go back and watch it after the show, so you can either call me out and see how head on or head off I was with the predictions. I don't know how much they trust Shelton Benjamin at this point in his career. MVP needs to be a mouthpiece, and strictly that. And Bobby Lashley, you know, I felt that ever since MVP came back onto the main roster, or as a mouthpiece, I felt that Bobby Lashley finally started to get that importance that he had not had in a while. Apollo Crews, for me, I had going in. I did not think he was going to walk out with the championship. The challenger dominated early with sheer power, but Crews' craftiness allowed him to send Lashley from the ring before hitting a moonsault from the apron to the ring. Crews took back over on the outside, eventually driving Crews into the ring post while holding him on the shoulders in a fireman's carry. Crews' big comeback was cut off by a Lashley Dominator for a 2 count. Crews failed to hit the toss powerbomb, but he did hit a spinebuster into a nice standing moonsault, which did get a 2 count inside of the ring. Crews took over with his own power, hitting a press slam and a pair of German suplexes before heading to the top rope for a frog splash. As MVP got fired up at ringside, sensing the match was slipping away, Lashley responded by dropping Crews and locking in the full Lashley to win the title. As the Hurt Business posed for the cameras, Crews attacked from behind before leaving and vowing to get his title back. This was a solid match that showed off Crews' dynamic offense and Lashley's power game as well. Taking the title off of Crews is questionable, since he could have ran through the entire Hurt Business roster, but it's a move that keeps a group of solid force on Raw. I disagree there with CBS Sports on that. In order for a match or a two guys to have a feud. Doesn't have to be back and forth. Apollo Crews has been dominating. His U.S. title run was a nice gift. Apollo Crews is very talented. But what would the purpose be of Apollo beating Bobby Lashley if he's running through the Hurt Business is supposed to be dominating Apollo Crews, but CBS is saying taking the title off was questionable since he could have ran through the entire Hurt Business roster. But what would that do? Aren't we building the Hurt Business as these guys that are supposed to be this big dominant faction of three groups, and you're going to have Apollo Crews run right through all three of them? I get losing them. I get MVP not winning. Why would he beat Apollo Crews? Shelton Benjamin, well, I don't know what they think of Shelton Benjamin. I think that this was the right decision to give the title to Bobby Lashley. Could Apollo Crews could have had a more successful U.S. title reign? Yeah, of course he could, but they didn't really give him a wide variety of opponents for his U.S. title. It was just a feud with MVP that was months long, and I felt like they could have given much more. Bobby Lashley wins the title. I have a strong feeling that this is not over, and Apollo Crews is actually going to keep chasing his title back, especially after how he looked after the match. You talk about a match that was much better than I thought it was going to be. These are two guys that are no strangers to good work in the ring. It's Big E versus Sheamus. Sheamus is great, and Big E, we're starting to get the seeds being planted to tease his singles run, which we all want to see. We all want to see Big E have some type of gold. Regardless of what that gold is, we don't know. But we see these seeds being planted for Big E's single run. And this match with Big E and Sheamus, I really actually liked. Sheamus had trouble getting going early as he was repeatedly taken off his feet by Big E. A bit later, Big E missed a splash on the apron to let Sheamus take over, going to work on Big E's knee with stomps and a leg breaker. Sheamus stayed focused on the knee, grounding Big E with constant leg attacks before an Irish curse backbreaker. Sheamus was a bit ahead of Big E again on a comeback attempt, throwing up a knee to counter the spear through the ropes, and then again cutting him off with an Alabama slam as Big E tried to taunt over Sheamus's supine body. Sheamus locked in a modified sharpshooter. Big E, however, was able to grab the bottom rope and then hit a spear through the ropes. He really has to watch himself because every time Big E dives through the ropes, I genuinely fear for his life. Sheamus tried a bro kick, but was caught with a powerbomb and a big ending for the finish. The chemistry was outstanding, and this was a good showcase. Absolutely. There are guys, some guys that just have very great chemistry against one another. Two guys that haven't, there could be two mid-card guys. Big E wins this match, and this was a great match. This was actually one of the matches where I feel like if I was going to go back and watch the show, it'd be one of the first matches that I picked to go back and watch. Big E looked great. Sheamus looked great. Sheamus is still a factor. Now, I think, in all honesty, if they didn't have faith in Big E, they wouldn't have had him gone over. They wouldn't have. Big E, as a singles guy, has so much potential, and I'm talking universal title potential. I'm not talking mid-card potential. And he's just ready to break out. Let's talk about a match that, for some reason, CBS Sports gives a B+. Baron Corbin is not bad at what he does. He's not a bad promo. His in-ring style is so boring to watch. But I don't think that he's as awful as people pin him to be. But I feel like he's just there. He's there to be a heel guy who wins or loses, and he's just an annoyance, which means he's doing his job. Matt Riddle is capable of being in feuds with guys that are much, much better. For some reason, I don't know where they get a B+ start to this. Matt Riddle needs to be, from this point forward, needs to be put in ring competition with guys that are much better than Baron Corbin. No disrespect. Corbin hit Riddle with a clothesline as he jumped in the ring before the match began. Corbin stomped Riddle in the corner and took him outside to continue the beating. Riddle locked up a rear naked choke but was dumped on his back by Corbin. Then Riddle sat up and locked the hold right back in before finally being tossed to the mat. Corbin continued the physical assault on Riddle, but followed up his earlier tweet calling Riddle at home a failure at home. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. By using the same taunt in the ring, firing Riddle up. Riddle then knocked Corbin from the ring with a head kick. Riddle flurried with strikes before Corbin was finally able to land a right hand to slow things down, and moments later hit a deep 6 for a 2 count. Corbin fell into Riddle's full guard. He ate a few elbows before getting to his feet and being hit with a body kick and a floating bro. Matt Riddle beats Baron Corbin. One of the things that I want to talk about with this match is that prior to the match, Baron Corbin was interviewed about Matt Riddle, and he said he's going to be a failure in the ring just like he's a failure at home. Now, for the people that aren't aware, the real-life significance to that is that Matt Riddle supposedly had cheated on his wife, and King Corbin brought that in. We're not typically, we see Matt Riddle in this fun fashion of being this guy who's, great in the ring, but he's kind of more fun. He's not, he's outgoing and fun. He doesn't really get ticked off too much. But you could start to see Matt Riddle was actually really bothered by that. But Matt Riddle would win this match regardless. I can sit here, and some people are going to call me crazy for this, and tell you that the Women's Tag Team Championship may have actually been the best match of the show. CBS Sports gives it an A-, and I think I have to do the same. It was Bayley and Sasha defending their Women's Tag Team Championships against Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. Let me tell you this. We all have our opinions on Nia Jax. She might be an awful promo. She might be awful in the ring. She might not look like she belongs in the ring. But tonight, I won't say she did good, but she did what she had to. And somebody tweeted me out and said the same thing. Nia Jax did what she had to do. She didn't ruin anything. Again, we all have our standards with Nia Jax. Shayna Baszler's great. We all know this. She's boring to a lot of people, but she's great on the mic, and she's very good in the ring. And they were taking on Bayley and Sasha. Now, there was a couple of ways that they could have went into this match. They could have went into this match and had Bayley and Sasha retain, or they could have given Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler the women's championships, which would further take a next step into the feud with Bayley and Sasha Banks. What they did was this. As soon as the opening bell rang, Baszler tagged herself into the match and immediately began striking Banks before trapping her head in the corner and landing a series of kicks. Banks tied up Jax on the outside while Bayley was the legal woman, leading to Jax to be knocked on the floor where she clutched at her knee as Baszler was isolated in the ring. Jax got back involved, swinging Banks into the barricade repeatedly before entering the ring and taking over on Bayley until a sneaky Banks chop block behind the referee's back. Bayley hit a elbow drop on Jax, followed by a Banks frog splash for a 2 count. Thought there was a chance that the match could have ended here, but it didn't. Baszler locked Banks in a Muda lock, and then Bayley in the Karafuda clutch, simultaneously. Both of them, the way this match ended was pretty cool. Bayley and Sasha were both locked in submission. They were locked in submission on... Shayna Baszler had them both in submission, so I figured what they could have done is they could have had Bayley tap, but Sasha not, and Sasha could say, "You're the one that tapped out. I didn't tap out. You cost us the titles." But they didn't do that. They both tapped simultaneously. This was really good stuff with a fantastic final stretch that saw the pace go next level as things continued to slip away until Baszler's fantastic finishing combination. The ending of this match was beautiful. If you're one of those people that didn't see it, go back. You know what? In all honesty, how about this? Go back and watch this match. This was actually a good match. And I think that it surprised me. I will not sit here and say Nia Jax is anything above what we all think she is. But Shayna Baszler looked great. Nia did what she had to do. Bayley and Sasha lose the titles. So now Sasha Banks has no championships. And the only title remaining between the two is the SmackDown Women's Championship on Bayley. The next thing that we're going to talk about here is a match that this is kind of where I was frustrated. Well, we'll talk this. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler won the Women's Championships. I don't know what their actual plan is. I don't think they give them that much of a reign. Yeah, it's possible, but I don't see Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler having much of a reign with the Women's Tag Team Championships. I think it was meant to be given to them solely because neither of them... Well, Nia Jax hasn't been doing anything on television, and Shayna Baszler, I think, wants to chase the Raw Women's title, so I don't think they have much of a reign, but it adds to the feud of Bayley and Sasha. Keith Lee and Randy Orton, disappointed. CBS Sports gave this match a B. I'll sit here and tell you this. There's a touch of disappointment that wasn't more to watch. These two could have put on a hell of a match. After Lee bounced Orton from the ring early, Orton responded with a series of chops. The fight went outside the ring. Lee dropped Orton on the announce table and kept up the attack, but Orton was able to use that to set up a hanging DDT as Lee tried to re-enter the ring. Orton was setting up for an RKO when Lee hit a spear bomb out of nowhere to score the pin. This match was not good. I'm sorry. People are going to sit here and tell you this match was good. It was not good. Keith Lee is coming off of some of the best matches in NXT. Randy Orton just lost clean. This is where I genuinely felt frustration with this show. Okay, and let's explain this. Keith Lee winning was not the wrong call. First off, Keith Lee won, and he pins Randy Orton clean. That was the problem. 1 week ago, Randy Orton was on the hottest streak of his career, and since, he has lost 2 matches clean in less than a week. I had no problem with him losing to Drew at SummerSlam. I thought personally the match could have ended a little bit better. Then he lost to Keith Lee in the most anticlimactic way to end the match. It was a shockingly fast win, and one that came with Lee not even hitting his standard finisher. If there was doubt whether Lee was going to be treated well, a dominant victory over the strongest wrestler in 2020 should answer that. It's great for Keith Lee. The next step would be maybe they could fix his ring attire and give him some better music, because I know that they cut off the thing with CFO, but Keith Lee and his Bask in His Glory theme is 50% of what makes the guy special. There's a touch of disappointment. Again, I had no problem with Keith Lee winning, but this match was so underwhelming, and I can't sit here and tell you I enjoyed it. Tag team match: Rey and Dominic Mysterio versus Seth Rollins and Murphy. Now, for a feud to be a feud, it has to be double-sided, and that's one of the things that I don't think was actually happening with this. Seth Rollins and Murphy were owning this feud. There was no other way. If Rey and Dominic didn't win this match tonight, what is the point of this feud even doing anything to continue? Dominic attacked right off the bat and got off to a hot start. He looked very good in the beginning. It led to a bit of an argument between Rollins and Murphy. Rollins let it come back on Rey, eventually sliding him out of the ring and onto Murphy, who was laying at ringside with his knees up. Rey made the hot tag to Dominic, who tried to come in with a crossbody, only to be caught by Murphy and Rollins, turning the point into an assisted Falcon Arrow. Dominic took a bit of a beating before making the hot tag to Rey, who hit some explosive offense on Rollins before a drop kick to the legs. He then missed a 619, but he had a big kick for a 2 count. As the pace picked up towards the tail end of the match, Rollins scored a near fall by jumping up and hitting double knees. As Rey tried to come off the top rope with a crossbody, after Rollins took over, he screamed at Rey, "Where's your family now?" before demanding Murphy kick Rey in the head. Instead, Murphy's kick hot Rollins. Rey tagged in Dominic for a 619 and a frog splash on Murphy for the victory. As Rey slid out of the ring to toss Rollins into the barricade, what a night this was for pure wrestling action. Dominic continues to impress and is on pace, just never even slowed slightly from the opening bell. This was a good match. I thought that Rey and Dominic, I'm not, the biggest fan of non-tag teams and tag team action, but Rey and Dominic worked great together. And I think that if Dominic continues to build himself, he will have a very successful career in WWE. But they beat Rollins and Murphy. This was a right call. This was a good match. This is one of those matches, too, you can go back and watch as well. Again, I was at this point, it was just the Keith Lee and Randy Orton thing really, really irritated me. We rebounded with a nice tag team match, and then the main event happened. CBS Sports gives the main event a B-. I don't know what they're watching. Let's talk about the main event. The main event was Roman Reigns versus the Universal Champion Bray Wyatt as The Fiend and Braun Strowman in a triple threat no-holds-barred match for the Universal Championship. Let's talk about this. My problem is not with Roman Reigns winning. I'll get to that. Strowman attacked Wyatt during his ring walk, didn't waste any time. Wyatt hit a quick Sister Abigail for a near fall. Could you imagine if the match ended there? Reigns was still not in this match. Strowman tried to fire back at ringside, but Wyatt put him through the announce table with a Uranagi. Wyatt grabbed a mallet, but Strowman launched a chair at him before clotheslining him into the ring steps. Wyatt used the mallet to drop Strowman moments later, drilling him in the chest. Alexa Bliss was shown backstage. She had no factor in this match, playing with her hair and watching the action. As the two men battled up the entrance ramp, Strowman drove Wyatt off the cage, putting both men through a platform next to the stage. Strowman took the action back to the ring and went to the top rope, but he was caught by Wyatt, who hit a superplex that broke the ring. Talk about something that is predictable. That was. And out of nowhere, it was nice of him to join us at about, let's say, 75% of the way through a match. Roman Reigns was like, wait a minute. I'm a heel and I got a wrestling match. Roman Reigns made his appearance. The funniest thing, that the actual way the match ended was funny. But I thought that Roman Reigns was capable of being in the actual match. I think he would have looked a lot better if he'd just been in the match and wrestled. But he didn't wrestle at all. Anyways, Reigns appeared. He signed the contract held by Paul Heyman after having not signed it. So technically, Roman Reigns wasn't in the match because he didn't sign the contract. called the new referee down, tried to pin Wyatt, getting 2 near falls. Reigns then tried to pin Strowman, who also kicked out. Reigns hit Strowman with a steel chair several times in a row for another 2 count. Tried the same with Wyatt. Wyatt was able to lock in the mandible claw, but Reigns escaped with a low blow. He slid back into the ring and speared Strowman for a 3 count to win the title. The action between Wyatt and Strowman was the right kind of chaotic, but the ring breaking has lost all impact with the way it feels so set up before happening. Reigns coming in and doing little to win just doesn't feel like the right way to go, even if he works as a heel. And that's exactly what I said. I'm happy that Braun Strowman ate the pin instead of Bray Wyatt, but, you know, Roman Reigns was capable of being in this match, and I think if Roman Reigns had been in this match, this could have been a lot better than it was. Not to sit here and say that Wyatt and Strowman fighting was the worst thing I'd ever seen, but again, had Roman Reigns been in this actual match, it would have been a much better match. The tactics Roman Reigns used as a heel were great. Now, I hope, but there's one thing I'm hoping. I know he's with Paul Heyman, but one of the things I'm hoping before I head on out of here is I'm hoping that Reigns doesn't always have cheap pinfalls. I don't want him to always get these pinfalls where he's always assisted. The Miz was like that for years. I get he's a heel. You can have Heyman assist him. But Brock Lesnar would win his matches just as a dominant force, and that's what Roman Reigns needs to do. He does not need heel victories because then that, to me, takes the value away from Roman Reigns. But that's your Payback review. Again, this show was hit or miss. There was some things on this show that I thought were great, and then other things that just didn't make sense. But in all honesty, this show didn't need to happen, and it definitely didn't need to happen 1 week after SummerSlam. But you guys can have it, your own at it. Will be interesting to see. I believe the next pay-per-view is Clash of Champions, so it will be interesting to see where WWE goes from here. But I hope everyone continues to enjoy their day and stay safe.